Tiger. Easy.
Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. The end of the year is upon us, and I can look back over a very interesting and varied 2025 as ever. And I just want to sort of make a video about my 5 favourite and most interesting drives, and also some honourable mentions on the vehicles that I've driven over the last 12 months. I'll dive straight in with the 1965 Cadillac Coupe Deville, to use the American pronunciation. And this car really surprised me. It's not obviously not an exciting car in the sense of being sporty in any way whatsoever, but having grown up spending the early part of my working life working almost exclusively on Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars, which were 1960s and 1970 era cars, and a little bit older than that. I've always been sort of influenced by those and grown up with them. I know that's my sweet spot, really. So to drive a member of the competition for the first time, aka the 1965 Coupe Deville, was quite a revelation. Okay, we're just going to open the taps on this once more. Very distant hum, and that's it. And all of a sudden, you're up to, okay, 65 miles an hour is not an indicated 65. Is laughable these days, but it's the way it does it. It's satisfying. It's just, there is a feeling of solidity and power, of sort of invincibleness. The contemporary car, the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud 3, or what became the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow in 1975, the chief engineer at Crewe, at the Bentley and Rolls-Royce factory at the time, was a chap called Harry Grills. And Harry Grills was fanatical, as were a lot of people at Crewe, and this, I'm going to be bold and say this contributed to the factory's downfall in the 1970s, 80s, their gradual downfall in the 70s, 80s and 90s. All the engineers were very autocratic, and they weren't really team players. They all guarded their own little disciplines. This could also be a microcosm of British industry in general. I don't want to go too negative, but Harry Grills insisted that there was something called a sneeze factor built into the steering on cars of this era, and that was to make the steering very low geared. So if you moved the wheel like that, the car would hardly change direction. If you moved it like that, it would start to change direction. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but you get the idea. It was very low geared steering, and that's fine when the cars are new. It's almost acceptable. But by the time you've added in, how many steering joints does a Silver Cloud or S-Type have on the front end? Probably around about 14. By the time you get some play in any of those joints, the steering becomes even more vague and even less direct. And it doesn't take long before the whole car feels like it needs a written application in triplicate to go around a bend. So I was expecting the Cadillac to be very much the same. Shock of horrors. It wasn't. I'm actually very impressed with this car. It's great. The ride quality is fantastic. The driveline is very smooth and quiet, considering there's a lot happening. There's a 7-litre V8 under the hood there. It was actually, the steering is very direct for so large a car, whatever the length is, 19 feet or something. I was quite amazed at the handling of the Cadillac, and the turn-in, the way it actually bites into the corners, wasn't that bad either. I was very happy to drive that car, and it was a bit of a revelation after my Rolls-Royce and Bentley experience. Again, the Mercedes 600 was another rival in that sort of rarefied atmosphere, and the 600s also drive remarkably well. They really do. They were horrendously complicated, and we will do another video on the 600 that we're bringing back to life here in the new year, a sort of progress report stage 3 or 4, whatever it is. But I like 600s. They're great fun to drive. You really can hurl those around for a big saloon car, limousine. But Cadillac Coupe Deville is number 1. Number 2 is another bit of Americana, and that is the Peterbilt truck that we had in here. The sort of cab back with the big hood, the big bonnet in front of it, and I had loads of fun.
Well, here we are in this modest little runabout. Oh, they're in there somewhere.
It went through Hampson auctions. It got sold through the auction, but it had a huge sleeper compartment on the back, all the chrome, it was all going on. It was Americana Truck Central, that vehicle, that tractor cab, and I just loved driving it. The gearbox took a bit of mastering. It's a crash gearbox, there's no synchromesh.
I have had some driving lessons from a very skilled truckist, and he told me it's almost impossible to change gear on this without crunching the gears, so I'm happy to take his word for it. Oh! Oh! That didn't go too well. There we go. Silent gear change. Incredible. Unfortunately, not that one.
And driving it, I drove it about 20 miles from the garage here to Bolesworth Castle in Cheshire, which is about 20 miles. And it was certainly a challenge to drive it on Britain's narrow A roads, one lane that way and one lane that way. What is it, 7.5, 8 feet wide, something like that. That was a real challenge.
Here we go, junction, junction, junction. Whoops. Okay, the brakes take a bit of mastering. Whoops.
And to get used to the brakes, you push the brake pedal and then nothing happens. You push it a bit harder and nothing happens.
If you touch them a bit more, nothing happens. If you touch them a bit more again, it all happens. So it's very, very difficult to regulate the brake pedal.
You push it a bit harder and it all happens. You're stopping on a dime or a sixpence. So it was just a very, very interesting other vehicle to actually be up close and personal with and drive and have the chance to have a look over.
Do you know what? I'm actually beginning to love this. I really am. Just the thing for a Sunday afternoon drive. This is great. Oh, feel that turbo. Seriously, you can hear it spinning away, screaming. What an experience. Huge turbocharger coming on boost, spooling up. Whoa. Incredible. Torque just pulls you along. That's what 1,850 foot-pounds does for you.
I really did enjoy that, the Peterbilt truck. Another car that, another vehicle that really captivated me in 2025 was the immaculate BMW 3-litre CSL we had in. I'll take it down to sort of 1500 RPM. That's it there. And even then, the tail squats and the nose lifts and it's oof. And the turn-in, I suspect, with those 16-inch wheels is actually rather more there than I remember having driven other CSIs and CSLs. But that ladlefuls of torque, it's just absolutely delicious, the power delivery. They were in the early to mid 1970s when they were released into Britain with 500 examples only, which they called the City Pack. They were specially sort of prepared 3-litre CSLs, and in right-hand drive. And by the time BMW had put some of the options, the delete options, on the more hardcore home market German CSLs, by the time BMW had put them on, like bumpers, electric windows, things like that, they were almost back to the weight of a normal CSI, but they were still a very interesting car. And that one we had in, it was a joy because it's old school engineering. We get the car in, it's running okay, it's running on 6 cylinders and presentably well, but it's nowhere near as ferocious sounds too strong, but they are so rippy on acceleration, those cars, when they're right. It was nowhere near that. And to be able to bring the car to light, on the video I adjusted the tappets, the valve clearances, got the top end of the engine nice and quiet, which is routine maintenance. That sort of back in the day was done every 12,000 miles anyway. Then sort out the fueling side of things and the ignition, and the throttle linkage actually wasn't opening the throttle, which is something I regularly talk about on classic cars. The fact that the throttle, if the throttle linkage ain't working properly and opening the throttles, you're not getting the benefit of all the horsepower that you've supposedly invested in. So James is sat in the car, making a sort of cameo appearance. So I'm going to ask him to floor the throttle as if he was driving the car. Just give it a good shove. That's it. Okay, now that should in theory be the throttle fully open. Look at that. All that. Is that foot still on the floor? Right, all that is lost motion. So that means the butterfly flap in here is opening to about there instead of there. We did all that, 2 or 3 different faults, and it just brought the car to life. It's all about the performance. So now that it's warmed through, I'm going to drop it down a cog, and let's see if that BMW Straight 6 magic is there. Oh yes, immediate. Is so fast. For a 1970s car, it's electrifying. But the torque, I mean, BMW managed to get big power out of relatively small engines, just with clever valve timing, combustion chamber design. They used that single overhead cam. They started life on 14-inch wheels, I think, the 3-litre CSLs. And this one was on 16-inch wheels, which a lot of single-make specialists are now commissioning alloy wheels which look like the original items from the 60s, 70s, but they're not. They're actually larger. Same design, but just gone from 14 to 16-inch diameter. And obviously the tyres are lower profile, so you end up with the same rolling radius, the same overall riding diameter, but they just improve the look of the cars. It's one, I'm not mad on resto mods, but BMW, Ferrari Dino, the Jensen FF, Rover P5B, they all have started life with smallish wheels, 13, 14-inch in the 70s, and then now there are bigger replicas made of them to really set them off. And it makes the car look better, it makes the stance look better, and it also makes them drive better. And all those things combined made me really fall in love with the 3-litre CSL. Now, having said all I said about the Cadillac, to go back to my roots, working on Rolls-Royces and Bentleys almost exclusively at the start of my working life, we come to another car which really did hit a sweet spot for me. in 2025, and that was the Freestone and Webb Bentley Mark VI Coupe, one of only 2 built with that body. And I've worked on countless Bentley Mark VIs. In fact, as I remember now, when I was 19 and I first started in the Rolls-Royce service workshop, the first ever job I did was to strip the hydraulic pump out of a Bentley Mark VI Cabriolet, the pump that operates the power-operated hood. It was done by electro-hydraulics, an electric motor driving a hydraulic pump which operated rams to push the top up and down. That was the first ever job I was assigned with. And the second ever job was changing the door seals on a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, which was a right pain, actually. But so the Bentley Mark VI, that sort of era of Bentley, the Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn in Rolls-Royce speak, but the Mark VI, the Bentley version, was far more sporting, although hardly sporting in the general scheme of things. It was still the silent sports car. But it had twin carburettors, it had a higher compression ratio, more free flow exhaust, etc. Well, I'm going to demonstrate, bearing in mind the time scale that was involved in making this, just to show even more how remarkable it is. I'm going to show you some aspects of British quality cars in the 1940s, because it is beautiful, absolutely lovely. Here's just to release the bonnet, the hood. This is like something from a vault at Fort Knox. They took this sort of thing incredibly seriously. There you are. Absolutely beautiful, a work of art. I'll just close that again. I mean, the bonnet catch is very substantial. And what a piece of engineering. There we go. That's going nowhere. Okay, and next, the door, bearing in mind that this door is 70 years old, I'm just going to close this with my little finger. There you go. Absolutely gorgeous. Still perfection. And then we have this. We just walk round to the back. Again, this is the coach builder's art as a thing of beauty. We put that in there. It's got a spiral thread on the end there. Just put it in there, turn it, it locks, and there we have the boot. And here is the toolbox, the original toolbox from 1949, still complete. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. And here is the original torch that plugs into the dashboard, plugs into a socket on the dashboard. Absolutely gorgeous. We gently close this again. Do that. And then unscrew the handle. How about that? My good lady and myself were invited to an event at Aintree Racing Circuit in Liverpool, where the Grand National Horse Race is held these days, but it used to have a car racetrack round it, and the British Grand Prix were held there. It was a serious racing circuit, and they managed the association that is the Aintree motor racing historic bit, managed to actually secure some parts of the track being closed. It crosses a golf course, it crosses 2 public roads. They organised all that, and we were able, with some other classic car enthusiasts, including I think a C-type, a works C-type Jaguar, no less, which is worth millions of pounds now. We were privileged to be able to drive all those round the old Aintree circuit and do a few laps of that in the Gentleman's Express, a coach-built Bentley Mark VI. That was a seminal experience. It really was. And another car which surprised me in 2025 was the E-Type Jaguar, which was verging on a resto mod as well. It had a more aggressive stance. It had more haunchy rear wheel arches. Instead of being straight through, they were actually flared. bulbous is the word I would use, and bigger wheels and tyres, all sorts of extras on it, a hotted up engine with fuel injection, modern electronic fuel injection. That car, again, a modern gearbox, 5-speed manual, and that was also a very interesting car to drive. The throttle response is certainly interesting. We've actually got good temperatures and pressures now. In fact, the oil pressure is better than it has any right to be in an early-ish XK engine. Right, let's see what we have. Unbelievable! This is a hot car, and I don't mean stolen. I am a purist. We've just finished restoration of an E-Type that we've been doing here, and that is almost exactly back to factory specification, and that's the way the owner wanted it. But I think there's a fine balance with resto mods. I'd be interested to know people's thoughts on this, actually. Sometimes I think they're very tasteful and very well done, and other times I think they can quickly tip over into being quite crass and actually dangerous. If you get the wrong wheels on the wrong old classic cars, it can actually cause problems. Because you get a sudden loss of grip, for example, because the wheel geometry, as wheels move up and down in bumps, can actually alter the contact patch of the tyre on the ground. And if you're not careful, if you're driving your old VW Beetle with very low profile tyres on the back and a souped up engine, you could find yourself in the scenery. So resto mods, I always think, have to be a little bit careful, but this E-Type, it just drove magnificently. Another car that blew my socks off. Okay, let's open the taps up and see what we've got. Wow. Whoops. Nothing like being in the wrong gear at the right time. Oh, this thing is unbelievably quick. Unbelievably quick. Wow. There's the other side of this car's character. So quick. It's as fast as it looks, this car. We'll try that again. Wow. I like it. We're going to have another go, just because we can. Oh, sensational. Now, one of the videos I did this year was the Jaguar XK140, the black one, which has just arrived from the States. And I road tested that car as part of the video. And I was very happy with the way it went. Obviously, there was no need to thrash it within an inch of its life, so I drove it reasonably, but not crazily. But what started to happen was it developed a ticking noise from the top end of the engine, which sort of came and went. And this has not been. This was something we didn't hear before, so it sounded like a noisy tappet, a noisy camshaft hitting a bucket as it went round, opening and closing a valve. There is the odd tapping noise coming from the engine, which we're going to have a look at that. It comes and goes. It seems like a tappet that's getting dry of oil and then getting a splash of oil again. And that should not be the case, because the camshafts on these are particularly well supplied with oil. It was one thing Jaguar really got right with this. I thought that was what it was, but the noise came and went. So Marcus started to investigate it. We took the cam cover off that side, and we discovered that the camshaft lobe had actually been smashing into the sleeve in the cylinder head, where the tappet bucket was pushed down by the cam, and it was just beginning to be a bit of a mess. Actually, it was just a tiny ticking noise, but it was getting worse and worse. And if it had gone unchecked, that could have been very drastic. This is something I've come across before in the last 40 years on Jaguar XK engines, is the actual There's a cast iron sleeve that fits inside the aluminium casting, the cylinder head, and then the tappet bucket moves up and down inside that, and they can come free and start to move up and down themselves. The actual sleeve that's supposed to be fixed, and that ain't great. So one thing's led to another, and we've actually ended up having to rebuild the engine on that car because we've discovered some areas of questionable workmanship, I think. Or not quite the usual way of rebuilding Jaguar XK engines. So we've taken the head off, we've taken the engine out, we've measured everything, and there are some discrepancies. The cylinder head we've sent away. That's got some cracks in it, which have been there for a while by the looks of it. That is not great either. So that car is now ongoing. We're doing some more work on that car. Much better it happened here, in a sense, than in a rally on the Peking to Paris or something or other, having paid thousands of pounds to have the car shipped to some exotic and remote location around the world, only to discover that the engine was in a bad way. So we caught it in time, but it could have been nasty. It happens sometimes, very rarely, fortunately. But yeah, the Jaguar XK140 is an ongoing story with more videos to be made in 2026. I'm going to have a cheeky little imposter here coming in, which is the Delorean. This is a bit of a cheeky cheat on my part, but hey. We did this in December 2024. And I had never had any experience with Deloreans before, never. It's a car that's completely passed me by. And again, I was very impressed with it. When I drove it, you know, there was so much bad press around this car, particularly with Mr. Delorean's alleged dodgy dealings, or confirmed dodgy dealings. It sort of cast a shadow over the whole car, but in the cold light of day, when we sorted the fuel injection system out on it and got it running absolutely perfectly, Corey did a beautiful job of that. I took the car out, and I was quite surprised at how well it drove. It's okay. You know, it's actually perfectly usable, this. It's not the most roomy cabin in the world with these great big doors, which are actually quite thick, but it's actually good fun, this. It's better than I was expecting it to be, and I'm not just being polite to DeLorean owners the world over, but it could be a lot worse. It really could. The turn-in is not bad. It doesn't particularly roll. The steering at least feels real, which is more than can be said for a lot of modern cars. Slow in. You know what? Who would have thought it? Iain actually could see himself driving a DeLorean from A to B. I am amazed. It's got a very good ride handling compromise. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but that's sort of not the point. I'd go as far as to say it was a reasonable package, actually, all things considered. So the DeLorean did rather surprise me, I have to say. Worthy of honourable mention again are a Lamborghini and Ferrari, both contemporaneous, both around at the same time. The Ferrari 575M and the Lamborghini either Murcielago, if you're from Spain, or Murcielago, if you're from Italy. Yeah, both great cars to drive, very good value. The Murcielago is beginning to fly the Coupe in terms of value. And if I'd had £1 for everybody who came here over the last 2 or 3 years and said, oh, Murcielago manual, it's the one to buy. I must buy a manual Murcielago. If I'd had £1 for everybody who said that to me, I'd be a rich man indeed. They made a minimal amount of manual Murcielagos. Most of them were the E-gear, as in Lamborghini speak. But time has been kind to the manual gearbox, actually. It's enjoyed a renaissance because people like going back to the interactive driving experience. And the Murcielago has got a beautiful gearbox, gear change. Absolutely lovely. The gearbox on these never ceases to amaze me, the manual transmissions. Even from cold, I mean, you have to have very user-friendly transmissions with an electronic gearbox selection system, such as the Ferrari 575, F1, well, all the Ferraris. You don't have the feedback of the gear lever in your hand saying, I'm not happy with this, just take it a bit more easy. It's a hydraulic actuator with a lot of force behind it, and it just pushes the selector rod into the next gear. What I'm saying is the gearbox has to be very sturdy, and it has to be up to that without ruining the synchromesh inside the gearbox. But the end result is, in manual form, the gear change is an absolute delight, and it totally betrays the amount of power and torque that's being put through it. It's both very usable cars. I think the 575 is very accessible. You can get fitted skid-only luggage for them. The Murcielago is a good car to go on a trip as well. A little more extreme. The Ferrari is for the cross-country, the cross-continent drive, and the Murcielago is for the Sunday afternoon thrill. I'm being very generalistic, but yeah. So there is my 2025 roundup of cars that caught me a little bit by surprise, or I was very happy to be reacquainted with. So I'd like to just say, wish everybody who is watching and their families a very, very happy Christmas and a very good 2026. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with something else very soon.